Have you ever found yourself turning up the volume knob just a little bit more in your truck when you start to hit the highway? Or how about the times you get slightly annoyed at yourself for upgrading to bigger off-road tires for the times you're not actually off-road but driving on the pavement? Well, I may just have the $300 solution for you today. So here it is, straight out of the Amazon Prime boxes, all of the sound deadening material, including the sound deadening mats themselves, and also closed cell foam. And all of this stuff is going in this 2020 Tacoma TRD Pro. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the Tacoma is notorious for being pretty loud from inside the cab, like to the point where it can be difficult to have conversations, especially when you're driving on the highway. And then of course, if you've got a truck with bigger tires, like this one with 285 size BF Goodrich trail terrain tires, things don't really get any better. But not only that, I personally think the Tacoma has quite a bit of sound leaks. So if you're having a phone conversation or listening to music loud enough, people from outside the truck can totally hear you, or whatever's playing out of the speakers of your truck. So yeah, let's try our best to alleviate some of that with installing some of the sound deadening material in this truck. Now, to give you guys context, those of you who are regulars know that I'm no tech, mechanic, or professional in any way, but I do love myself a good DIY project. And I've been following the sound deadening subreddit, as well as watching a bunch of YouTube videos of other people sound deadening their vehicles with decent success. I know there's kits you can buy that are specific to the Tacoma to sound deaden it, like this one from SoundSkins, or this one from Taco Tunes that I've heard other people really like. But turning to Amazon is definitely the cheapest, most accessible option, which is why it was appealing to me. You really just need two things, the sound deadening mats as well as the closed cell foam. I'll have those linked down below, but for the Tacoma, this plus some tools ended up being like $300, actually probably closer to $200 because I had a lot of leftover material. But yeah, I was interested in going the Amazon route for this one. I've never done this before on any vehicle, so today is partially an experiment because I'm not sure how effective it's going to be, but there's only one way to find out. I will be showing you guys my entire install in this video, but first, I'm sure like me, you'd be curious to see some before and afters so that you can decide if you even want to embark on a project like this. So there are a few tests I did, and very much like this entire install, I recognize that these aren't professional, and I really just did them to hopefully show you guys a result, since this is something that mostly has to be experienced in person, not really explained. But anyways, my first test here was attempting being the key word here, to see the decibel reading from inside the truck before and after. And then the other, playing loud music inside the truck with all the doors closed and seeing if we could hear the before and after difference from outside the truck to test out noise leak. So I've got an iPad mini here with an app that registers the noise in decibels, and by the way this is floating, it's not magic. There's actually a mount. I did a video installing this a while ago. It was actually pretty cool. I'll have it linked down below, but it was this dash mount from Cali Ray's LED, and there's a bunch of products compatible with it from a really good company called Tacform. You guys should check them out. They've got a lot of really good mounting solutions if you're looking for, you know, mounting iPads, phones, whatever. But yeah, the idea here is to drive around and see what this thing actually reads. I predict that this is a very crude test with many variables, and we're probably not going to see a difference, or if we do, it's going to be very, very marginal. Honestly, I think the best thing is going to be for me to just like tell you guys if I hear an actual difference and for you to believe me, but I still want to do my best to visually show you guys some numbers if we could. So I'll try to actually get some numbers to prove out what I hear, but we'll see. In all honesty, the result as shown on screen is basically identical to before, so a little underwhelming, but this was the truth. I can tell you that in person, the inside of the cab does sound different. Not sure if you could hear that. But anyways, the next test shows a little better on camera, the music leak test. I don't know what you guys are into, but I'm feeling some Backstreet Boys. All right, let's set it to like 20. feel like volume 20 is objectively not very loud, but you can very clearly hear what song is playing in the Tacoma, at least here in person, standing this close to the truck. It just makes me think about the different phone conversations I've had and how other people can totally hear me. Okay, so playing music inside the truck at that volume level, again with the engine off, you can definitely still hear it outside the truck when you're nearby, but I feel like it is a lot less intrusive. Again, it's very difficult for me to tangibly show you guys the difference or the effect of the sound deadening and kind of isolate the placebo effect from it as well, but I do think there is an improvement. You can just hear it when you tap the doors. It's crazy how different it is. I can just tell you that in person, it is very muffled. Now I remember it being a little echoey and now it's completely muffled. I think that's enough tapping for you all to get the point, but I want to get into the install, but overall, I will say there was a noticeable improvement in person, and by no means does it sound like this interior has complete noise cancellation now, and I want to make that clear, but the sound deadening I installed today did have an effect. Alright, so on to the install for this one, y'all. As you might expect, this isn't a level hard or tricky, it's just straight up tedious. So I used a few plastic trim removal tools. Those will save you a lot of time, but in addition to the sound deadening material, I also bought this roller. This is for the adhesive of the sound deadening mats. And you know, I like this little roller a lot. It was nice and smooth because it has bearings, but more on that when we need it later on. I decided to go about this whole project by just removing everything first, and by that I mean getting to the metal for the doors and the flooring, then apply the sound deadening mats and foam all at once with everything exposed, and then lastly put everything back together. So with the doors, it's pretty simple. There's a couple panels to remove, as you can see here, which I just do with the plastic trim removal tool, a button clip to pop out, and then also a couple screws. And you can start prying away at the panel until you realize you forgot to remove the window switches, so do that real quick. And then the panel should easily come off. And this is pretty much the same for the rear doors as well. Now you guys, I apologize, this isn't one of my super detailed step-by-step tutorials because I feel like if I filmed everything, like every single clip getting removed, this whole video would be like an hour long, it would get really boring, but I'll say once you get the hang of it and you do one door, the rest go quickly. So stripping the four doors are fast, but getting to the floor is quite the process. That is what's going to take up most of your time. So to do that, first I'm removing the seats. These are just 4 bolts that in my case need a 14 and 15 millimeter socket. You'll also need to carefully unplug the airbag and 2 other harnesses to make the seat free before you can pull it out. And here you can see me take out the seat jackers. If you're new to the channel and haven't seen any of my videos on these are quite literally amazing for the Gen 3 Tacoma because it corrects the seating angle. Yes, even for trucks with powered seats. If you want to see the full explanation and review, you can check out that video. But yeah, highly recommend seat jackers for the most comfortable ride in a 3rd gen Tacoma. Floor mats obviously come out too, and fun fact, in the TRD Pro, if you stack them on top of each other, they make this pattern, and the mountains in the background that the tire tracks are leading up to are actually the Grand Tetons. Learned that from a designer at Toyota one time, super cool. So at this point I thought, okay, the front seats are out, now I should remove the rears. And with how I did things, I just needed to remove the bottom rear seats because ultimately I just needed to pull the carpet. So the top portion staying in place, the bottom portion gets removed. Then I removed these plastic clips with a flathead that hold the bottom storage compartment in. And I took 2 10mm bolts and a screw out that was holding the behind the seat storage compartments. And then another thing I noticed I needed to take out, but kind of didn't want to, was the center console. Although this was really easy, it really just is two 10mm bolts inside the center console and a harness that plugs into the inverter. But yeah, that will allow me to access the carpet. I also popped off these side trim pieces, and this is how the truck is looking so far. Although we have a little bit further to go, so these side panels also had to get taken off. And I realized the bottom storage bin actually had to get removed itself too before I was able to easily access the carpet. Then I finally pulled the carpet, which felt very satisfying. So I want to say in general, because we're removing so many bolts and clips and stuff, I'd recommend putting everything that belongs together in piles and then labeling where stuff goes. That's what I was doing off camera, and it helps out so much when you put the truck back together, because the worst thing to happen is finishing and then realizing you have an extra bolt or two and not knowing where it belongs. I will say though, that's one advantage of filming for YouTube. I can always cross-reference my work with footage for the most part. Even though overall filming this kind of stuff does add to the install time, but I'm not complaining at all. I have a ton of fun making these videos, and after a few years I've just gotten used to having a camera in my face while I work. This is the truck all taken apart without it, and now we can easily access the metal floor. So I start by cleaning the surface because the sound deadening mat will adhere to it, so we want to get rid of all the debris, and now's the fun part of laying all the mats down so that they cover the floors. I made cutouts of the necessary parts that needed to be exposed, like all the grommets, and stuck them down to the floor. Now, if you don't cut perfectly on the first go-to, that's okay. Like, I was cutting way bigger holes than I needed, but I ended up with a bunch of scraps of my mat, so I just used those later on to cover up the extra exposed areas later on. So after the floor, which was kind of tedious because there's a lot of surface area, you can't forget the doors, so peel off that plastic that's covering everything very, very carefully. Here I'm using a box cutter with a sharp edge, and essentially I'm just pulling it away from the door panel to get easy access to inside the door. Now the space here is small, but you can get through to the entire inside of the door through these two cavities. What I found was helpful was cutting the material into smaller sections, and I definitely wasn't perfect. There was overlap, but the good thing is that there's a lot of room in the doors, so I feel like anytime I had overlap for the most part, it was fine. It's wasting a little material, but I had plenty. Now, being a few hours into this, I was pretty exhausted, and technically this isn't even the halfway point because we still have to do the hardest part in my opinion, all of that rolling, because what you're supposed to do here is get these pockets to flatten out, and I think that's to properly adhere the mats. So yeah, I got the roller out, and while it was great, you'd be pretty surprised, at least I was, that the sound deadening mats are like very difficult to flatten. I mean, like, I had to go really hard and make multiple passes over and over to get any kind of result. I swear it was harder than it looked, and the doors are even harder too because gravity is not on your side. So honestly here, I just did the best I could. And again, maybe you guys who are experts at this stuff are cringing because this looks, I don't know, kind of different from what I expected the post rolling to look like, at least. Now, this was rough. I definitely felt like my forearms got gains after this whole process, and I didn't even do like a top tier job. But after just spending like over an hour, my arms were dead, and I felt like the material adhesion was going to be okay, so I moved on. Again, feel free to judge me in the comments down below, because if someone else is following this along and doing this, I'd rather have them do the right way versus my way. The next step is applying the closed cell foam, which application-wise is very similar to when I added the sound deadening mats. You just cut around the grommets and everything and stick that layer right on top. This is how it turned out, and again, very DIY, not perfect. I think I could have done better had I spent more time, although I'm not sure how improved the actual result would have been, but this was how it was looking at this state. And now we're officially ready to put the truck back together. And yes, this is tedious, but it's why it was so important to have everything organized while I was taking it apart, and just great that I was keeping pieces and bolts and clips all together. The one thing I didn't do, and honestly might have been a mistake here, is not sound deadening the back or the roof. I did get a good result, as you saw or may have been able to hear, but perhaps doing that next time would drastically improve things as well. If any of you have experience, let me know if this makes a big difference. Now, while there aren't a lot of bolts to reinstall back, I do want to emphasize that it is very important to torque the seat belt bolts, as well as the bolts that are for the seats themselves, just so anything doesn't come loose. I've heard the saying you can kind of do it the German way to make sure they're good and tight, but I recommend torquing because my good and tight can only get so far, and you know, these are safety items, so I'm always a fan of torquing. With the seat in, that is the install, and you guys saw how the results were before and after already, so yeah, this was the entire project. After going through this and trying this out, I think the best bang for your buck, although I can't be 100% sure because I just did this all in one go, would be to just do the doors first and see how that is. That is a lot less material. I think the doors are where the biggest issue is, and the doors are going to be a lot faster than ripping apart your entire truck and getting to the flooring like I did. And I can't separate out how just doing the doors would sound from doing both the doors and the floor, but all I'm saying is if I were to redo this project myself, I would probably just start with the doors, see how I feel, and then do the floors if I felt like I needed. Again, I'm totally not a professional in something like this, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are probably cringing at my work, but the result was good, and I guess that's all that matters. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if after watching this video, you're curious to try this out on your own truck, or if you've done it on your own truck, how the results are for you, how you did it. If you want to connect more with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It is at ChloeKuo Taco, and I post more in real time on there. Otherwise, Otherwise, thanks again for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys!